How's it going, guys? Matt here from Code Tech and Tutorials. Just wanted to give a quick update as I don't have any main productions going on right now, but wanted to give you guys something, let you know where I'm at and all and that sort of thing. Um, I made a post, a little social community post recently that is simply the question. I'm not saying anything, assuming anything, or pushing any political direction. Just asking the question: is using AI to trade stocks or crypto unethical? Yes or no, or it depends, leave a comment. The majority of people have said no, it's not unethical. 15% did say yes. That's a, is it a is that a 1 in 5? 1 in 6? Somewhere around there. I don't know. That's not a perfectly accurate percent, but we'll say 1 in 6. 1 in 6 people said, yeah, that's unethical. That's not cool, man. Yeah, but the majority of people are like, no, do it. Do it, man. Do what you got to do to make that the narrow. Hack the system. But which to me, ethics are a tricky bunch because if you follow ethics perfectly, well, look, it's really not my place to talk about ethics anymore. Sure, I've studied it a lot and have my own opinions, but I don't want to get into it anymore. Just it's really interesting to see that most people are just cool with it. Honestly, I'm not. I don't think it's cool. I think it sucks. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that. All right. So what I really wanted to do here was read and comment on the software Gore video I did a while ago that I think is really important. It's really long. So, wait a minute. What am I doing here? Let's back it up. Go to comments. Okay. And we're just going to look at this comment. I want to read it. It's really important. Squiggly P, shout out. Very nice comment. Appreciate you taking the time to write it out. I think it's pretty important. And a lot of things that were well said. So, it's very long, as you can see. So I'm going to paraphrase some of it, but there's some important things that I just want to read and talk about. All right, so here we go. And to quote, this isn't me talking, I'm just going to read this. I do agree with the idea that there are now more new devs who are just ignorant to a lot of things they need to know and thus make more mistakes, but I feel like there's more going on than that. Well, there's a lot of information out there in the wild. I think there's only a small amount of it that's actually good and true. The fact that the internet is a place where anyone can just up and decide to post whatever information, code, ideas, etc., whether it be true or correct, is a major issue that needs to be addressed. Pause. I don't know if I would consider this a major issue, but I see what he's getting at and the point here. Yeah, it's anybody can just say anything. But the counter to that is that it's heavily vetted. There's also anybody can say, hey, this is wrong. So yeah, it's easier to find misinformation, but usually it gets corrected, but not always. So it's a tricky thing. You got to be careful. Definitely got to be careful about what information you're following. And I might get to that a little further later in this video because I have some examples where this is supported. Yeah, what he just said here is supported. All right, we have the exact opposite problem as the old timers here. Back 30 or 40 years ago, there were fewer people out there making stuff, and smaller numbers meant you had a limited quantity of code and information out in the wild, and it was hard to find it all, which makes sense because, 30, 40 years ago, the internet wasn't going wild. It was only specific boards and stuff. And I think he talks about that somewhere here. What was out there was generally spread through news groups and BBS systems and was heavily vetted, built upon by people who were very skilled. Access was limited. You had to to get access to even be interested in getting access. If you had asked a question, it would be answered in a day or two, or sometimes longer, by people who had to think about it, had time to think about the issue and write up a lengthy explanation. And that's something really interesting that I hadn't really considered before. I mean, I guess it's obvious when you think about it. But yeah, not only the super technical, those that were ready to be in it had access to these boards and internet. You just, nowadays anybody can just open their phone or web browser and go to whatever forum, Stack Overflow, Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is, and just like look at stuff and post stuff. But back in the day, you had to actually know how to get on these boards and these BBS systems, and it wasn't exactly easy to just build your own computer back then. It's super easy now. You can just follow a guide. All right, let's continue. Today, you have a situation where you can ask a question on Reddit or Stack Overflow or whatever and get a dozen answers from a dozen people in 5 minutes. Yep. And those people may or may not know what the heck they're talking about. These systems incentivize people to blurt out whatever simple answer jumps out to the front of their minds first by awarding points and being able to win the answer, whatever. Stack Overflow. Meaning the first is better than being right. I don't know if I fully agreed with this, but I see the point. Yeah, because like I was saying earlier, these are pretty heavily vetted, and if someone says something wrong, usually there's some other person that jumps in and says, hey, no, that part's wrong or something. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes people have no idea, and they'll just be like, oh, that one's the most popular, let's go with that, and it's wrong. So that's kind of what he's saying here, I think. But yeah, it is, I feel like it is countered by there often is someone good out there that will correct it or at least try. But I think man, I hate to bring up references to old videos where there's some obscure part where I did one thing and I can't find it anymore. But in one of my videos at one point, I did observe that basically this same thing that which would it might have been oh geez, it might have been the BGFX video or something. There was there was a whole length of comments about some issue and I couldn't find the right answer. Even the most popular answer didn't seem to be right. But there was some answer way at the bottom of some guy that got 0 votes, 0 likes. He got nothing. He posted a pretty lengthy, basically the most correct answer I could find, and he basically got totally no recognition for it. It was either my BGFX video or I don't know. It was one of those more tricky ones. But yeah, so I have personally seen this happen, although it's rare. Most of the time, I feel like it gets corrected, but there are times where it's like the person who finally took the time to do it right gets just no recognition, and it stinks for them because they're probably looking at it like, wow, I took all this time, I researched, I put this together, I posted the technically correct answer, and then people are still just up voting the wrong one and just not even realizing that the correct. Yeah, it's a frustrating thing as someone who takes the time, and it's interesting. So, all right, let's continue. There are a lot of problems, and what is needed is a highly curated place where people can exchange information in a room and actually talk about it and discuss ideas and solve problems, not just chit chat or blurt out whatever is in their head right now. And I think that's what Stack Overflow tried to be, and they're okay, but I can barely use Stack Overflow anymore. It's Stack Overflow. This is a hot take. Hot take incoming. This is probably wrong. A lot of people are probably going to disagree with it, but this is my opinion and my hot take on Stack Overflow as of today. I used to think Stack Overflow was really good. I used to be able to Google questions about things when I was basically a noob and didn't know what I was doing really, and get pretty decent answers. But that doesn't work anymore. I can almost never find the answer I'm looking for on Stack Overflow now because, well, I think I kind of know most of the basics. And Stack Overflow, people only seem to answer with the basics. There's never, or never's not right, but there's rarely like elaborate, proper answers. It's usually just here's a chunk of code to do what you're trying to do. Now move on with your life. No more answers, please. You know, it's that sort of thing. So Stack Overflow stopped being useful to me about a year or two ago, and it was it's still somewhat useful. Occasionally, I find stuff on there, but like 90% of the time, yeah, I want to say 90% of the time, when I have a problem, I just have to dig in and figure it out myself. There's no answer on the internet for it, and if there is, it's buried, and there's no easy way to find it. So it suddenly became more about getting really technical, looking at the fine details and finding my own answer. That's how I have to solve all my coding problems these days. There are no guides. There are no guides for this advanced stuff or advanced engineering. You just have to understand the mechanics behind it, all the logic behind it, and come up with your thing. And if you try to explain that elaborate, complicated thing to someone, a very, very small percentage of people actually understand it. And if you post that sort of answer on, say, Stack Overflow, as we're using as the example here, it will get downvoted or washed away, or people will berate you because they don't understand it and they want the simple answer. And yeah, it's a problem, and it basically leads to more software gore. Uh, okay, end hot take. That's the end of my hot take. I don't know. I'm kind of curious what other people think about that, or if they have the same experience. From a newbie perspective or from a pretty advanced perspective. Like, how are people actually seeing Stack Overflow and sites like Stack Overflow these days? Because that's been my experience right there. All right, let's continue. There are a lot of problems, and what is needed is a highly curated. Okay, we already said that. Okay, next one. Squiggly P, just drop in bars. All right. I'm not that strong of a programmer though. I'm in my 40s, mostly resigned to being more of a hobby for me. Okay, cool. See, this is good. People need to be honest with where they're at. There's a lot of people that just think they're bigger than they are, and some people probably think that about me, and that's fine. I don't really have any. Well, I don't know. It's really hard to analyze yourself in this sort of thing, but I feel like I don't really have that many illusions about my ability. I know I'm not a perfect programmer. I honestly still consider myself kind of a noob, but and I don't know if I'll ever grow out of that. When you're programming something that's difficult and requires a lot of complex solutions and a lot of different parts interconnecting, you always feel like a noob because there's so much going on. It's literally impossible unless you have like a 5 million IQ, exaggerated, but to like think of all these pieces at once and keep it all in mind at once. So programming isn't easy. It's made to look easy. It's often broken down to be easy for like one piece at a time. But when you tie it all together, it is a lot, and it's pretty complicated. So there are very few strong programmers out there. I don't think they exist. Even like, I don't know, without dropping names, I'll say I've had interviews and gotten jobs where the people interviewing me I thought were going to be like super good programmers, but when it came down to it, even when I was just like, water cooler talking about code and whatever, I would often find that I knew a lot that they didn't. And they've been coding for many years longer than me and that sort of thing. That became a very common thing that kind of surprised me when I started to get into the industry is real like just me knowing personally that I'm kind of a noob. I kind of had that thing like I got a lot to learn. I'm going to listen to people. I'm going to read a lot. I'm going to try a lot. I'm going to try different things. And then getting into actual jobs and finding out that these veterans don't really know much more than I do. They know a lot of technical stuff and there's a lot to learn from them. But there's also a lot of stuff that I realize that they don't, and that sort of thing. So it's just really interesting. It's not as simple as it all seems. You can't just say I have this many years experience, thus I'm better. It doesn't work that way. We all have different aptitudes. Some of us have incredibly logical minds, some of us have more creative minds, and that sort of thing. There's no year amount that says you're a good programmer. I have more examples of that, but I'll just leave it at that for now because I think that's an important takeaway. Okay, let's continue. I think a good chunk of the reason why it's taken me so long to feel like I have a decent grasp of what I'm doing, and it's a tenuous grasp at best, is that A, there's not enough time in my day to work on things, but more importantly, it's impossible to know as an amateur programmer who's blowing smoke up your donkey versus who's got the goods. I've learned and unlearned a lot of stuff from people who I later discovered had learned some trick or some quick, easy way to do something, and then decided to teach it like it was the way to do things. I can relate, and maybe I'm guilty of teaching some things that way. So interesting. And yeah, can definitely relate. The exchange of or information has resulted in a much higher signal to noise ratio and led a lot of people to only have a surface level understanding of things because there's a serious lack of content with any real depth or breadth to it. Okay, now I want to say something about this that I think is interesting. I think there's actually quite a bit of content that has depth and breadth to it, especially when you look at a lot of the advanced computer science lectures on YouTube and stuff. The thing is, they are really boring and nearly impossible to sit through. I've tried. I've tried a lot of. I've tried like, you know, if you watch something entertaining, you're like wide-eyed, paying attention to every moment. But when you listen to something boring, you might be able to tune in for a few minutes, and then your mind just is like, oh, going other places, doing other things, and before you know it, you're asleep or something. So that's personally what happens to me when I'm trying to watch something that's highly involved and has a lot of details. Is I have to watch it in like 10-minute chunks because I literally fall asleep, and I don't know what to do about that. It's like super interesting stuff to me, and I want to keep going, but my brain is doing its own thing. It's like, hey, this is a great time to snooze off. I'm like, no, it's not. Come on, we need this, you know. So I think there's content out there. I just think it's really boring. So that's kind of one of the things I'm trying to do with this channel, Code Tech Tutorials, that I'm trying to make. And I might not always succeed in every video. Some of my videos are probably really boring and make you fall asleep. Sorry. You know, you can always let me know, try to do better. And I am always trying to do better, but I'm trying to make entertaining content that has some of this depth and breadth. And it's an ongoing process. It's rather difficult to do correctly, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of analysis and revisions, and sometimes it just takes a lot of experience. Like I have to fail a bunch before I finally get it right. And it's tricky to know which ones to post sometimes. Sometimes I'll post something and then realize, oh, that's so wrong. And I'll think about taking it down, but then so many people, it's bringing a lot of people to the channel. So I have to make the decision about whether I take it down because it's got some wrong stuff in it, or whether I just leave it up because people seem to like it and it brings people to the channel. I don't know what to do about it sometimes. All right, let's continue. You get a thin layer of basic knowledge and copy, pasta, autocomplete your way to the solution, to a solution. I know this is true because it was absolutely true for me and still is in a lot of regards. Learning to program has been the most frustrating things I've ever done because I learned something only to find out I was wrong or not really correct or really only useful in situation X or is incomplete. Yeah, been there. I think this is hard to say eloquently or in the right words, but basically it comes down to understanding the data, I think. Because when you find some solution for something, it's often manipulating some data. And if you really understand how the data is organized and how you want it to be or whatever you want to change with it, then you can apply the proper, we'll say, algorithm or function or whatever it is to it. But you know, you can Google the problem. You can say, I have this, I want to do this, and you'll find answers, and maybe they're correct, maybe they're not, and maybe you don't know how to analyze it. So that's where a problem arises, because then later there's a bug in your program, and you don't understand why it's a bug because you never quite understood the solution to begin with, and then you're just in a rabbit hole of, or I don't know, we'll say a quicksand pit of you can't solve it because there's unknown. And yeah, it's really complicated to say, say what I'm trying to say there, but you probably get the point. All right, my own ideas. This is long. All right, we're getting to the final stretch. Let's check out Squiggly P's own ideas. Very insightful comment so far. All right, simplify the process. Totally agree. Yes, I've been using C for the last few years. It's small. It's easy to understand. Doesn't require some massive collection of build tools to get it to run. Wait, I don't know if I would call C small and easy to understand, but yeah, you might be smarter than you think you are, Squiggly P, because most people don't consider C small and easy to understand. Most people find it to be really complicated. I've learned more in the last few years than I did in the last decade with C++, Python game engines, etc. Very interesting. 2. Stop incentivizing bad or dumbed down or rushed information through gamification of information exchange platforms. Instead, incentivize the quality of the actual content being shared. Okay, yeah, agree. Social media platforms are a terrible place to find good information, as they do the worst thing they can do to ensure quality content. There's some good info out there, but less than 1% of the content. I don't know if I'd agree with those percents, but the point is there, the point is made. Yeah, Facebook is a terrible place to find information. I've joined some coding groups and some C++ groups and stuff like that on Facebook, and yeah, totally useless information. Basically, the only things that get upvoted are people's memes, and any kind of real stuff is completely ignored because it's too boring or something. So yeah, social media isn't really a place to hardly share this. There's maybe some things I don't know about on social media where it's actually good. Not like I've seen them all. I think the information out there, I'm guessing it's higher than 1% of good information though. Maybe it's more like 15 or 20. 1% is a very, very small percent. All right, 3. I genuinely think we need a new beginner language. I myself learned the basics of programming with BASIC when I was in grade school. I was like 7 or 8. Nice. I do not think I would have gotten C or I would have gotten Python. I see people suggest Python or other similar easy languages for children all the time. I think it's a horrible, horrible mistake. Why on earth would anyone think that introducing a new programmer to concepts like OOP and inheritance and crap like that would be a good idea? It blows my mind. Like teaching their kid 1, 2, 3s and ABCs and then just giving them an algebra problem to solve. You know what these mean, right? It's just letters and numbers. Also, Scratch is okay language that gets suggested, but BASIC was being used to write commercial software at the time. Scratch is not a language that can grow with the user. You can do advanced stuff with BASIC. Any training wheels language should be able to teach concepts of memory management, data structures, etc. when the time comes. Not immediately necessary when starting out, but accessible when you're ready for it. Cool. Just random thoughts. Bottom line, in my opinion, is that the saturation information and hugely increased demand for new programmers equals a recipe for tech disaster. There's also a huge demand to just pump out barely trained worker bees with crash course type boot camps. That magnifies the issue further. Excellent, excellent comment. And yeah, I think you can probably tell if you watch the video that that's basically very close to a lot of the same points I'm making. I don't go into as many fine details about languages and stuff. But a very valuable comment that I think a lot of people can get a lot from. I don't 100% agree with it, but I agree with a giant portion of it, and I think he's right. So thanks for the comment, Squiggly P. Best of luck to you out there. And I don't know, to the rest of you out there, just, keep coding, you guys. Keep working on stuff. I wish I had the perfect advice to fix all this stuff, but I don't, and I don't know if I ever will. But I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to, that's basically the whole point of this channel, is to try to simplify stuff correctly, and that's actually really quite difficult to do, and it's going to take some trial and error, as I'm sure any longtime followers have seen. But moving forward, we're just always moving forward. All right, appreciate you guys watching, tuning in. I'll see you in the next video. Matt out. Peace.